Book 3, Sutra 9, and in the book that we've been reading, there's not much commentary on the next few sutras, and he said that at the beginning of book 3 that some of them will have commentary and some of them, he said, are self-explanatory, which I'm not sure that they are. But there's no commentary, so I looked up the commentary in this book, the Edwin Bryant book, and he does have commentary. His translation is slightly different as well, so I'll read them both. So 9 is, the impressions which normally arise are made to disappear by the appearance of suppressive efforts, which in turn create new mental modifications. The moment of conjunction of the mind and new modifications is Nirodha Parinam. And that's supposed to be self-explanatory. So I read the Edwin Bryant one, and he says the translation is slightly different. The state of restraint, Nirodha, is when there is disappearance of outgoing or worldly samskaras and appearance of restraining samskaras. These emerge in the mind at the moment of restraint. So the moment of restraint is Nirodha Parinam, if I'm trying to combine both translations. And so then he says, in this sutra, as well as 3, 11, and 12 below, Patanjali speaks of 3 types of parinama, transformations or developments of the mind. Since change and movement at every moment are the very nature of the gunas, says Vyasa, the question arises as to what type of change takes place during the moments when the mind is restrained, which by definition should entail no change or movement at all. In other words, the gunas are always in flux, and since the gunas underpin the entirety of Prakriti, and consequently everything emanating from her, everything in manifest reality is therefore constantly in motion. This includes the mind, which, as we know, is also Prakratic. If the mind, like all Prakratic products, is by its very metaphysical nature constantly in motion and changing because of the ever-shifting gunas that constitute it, how is it possible to still the mind? This would seem to be inherently impossible. The mind is made up of samskaras. Following Patanjali in this sutra, divides these 2 basic types of vayutana, outgoing samskaras, that propel the mind into any kind of activity, and nirodha, restraining samskaras, which are activated in meditation and restrain the outgoing samskaras. Patanjali is now providing more detailed and subtle information as to the mechanics underpinning the state of Chitta Vritti Nirodha that he established as the goal of yoga. Specifically, Nirodha is attained by Nirodha samskaras. According to the psychology of samadhi, when the yogi sets about meditating, what is actually occurring is that a restraining Nirodha set of samskaras is being cultivated to suppress the normal flow of mundane outgoing vayutana samskaras, active in the turmoil of everyday thought. Thus, when the mind is active and roaming about as in normal consciousness, the restraining samskaras are latent and therefore absent. And when the restraining samskaras are active and dominant, the outgoing ones are being suppressed. The idea is that there is always an ongoing dynamic between these 2, and therefore, even when the mind is restrained in meditation, there is a tussle between the restraining samskaras and others, and consequently ongoing movement, albeit imperceptible to the meditator. In other words, on a metaphysical level, there is always movement in Prakriti, however subtle, even when the mind appears to be completely restrained and fixed in the higher stages of Sabija Samadhi. Samskaras are not destroyed. They are either active or latent, although, as we know, they can be weakened or burnt and thereby rendered impotent. Even when sense cognition, which produces samskaras, is checked, the store of samskaras from previous sense cognition does not just disappear. Samskaras remain latent and can activate at any time. The cloth is not destroyed when the weaver is absent. By practicing meditation, the force or potency of the outgoing samskaras from the store of samskaras is gradually lessened, and the emergence and strengthening of Nirodha ones increased. Although, as Vijana Bhikshu points out, this is a gradual process that increases through practice. This dynamic between these two sets of samskaras is the movement that takes place during meditation. Therefore, at every moment of meditation, there is suppression of the latent outgoing samskaras and strengthening of the restraining samskaras that are performing this task of suppression. Harihananda compares it to the struggle of a spring under the stress of weight. The springing potential of the spring does not disappear, it remains latent. But this occurs only when a constant restraining pressure is applied. The relationship between the two sets of samskaras is thus never static. The reader can refer back to 118 for further discussion on this aspect of yoga. So then I'll read again the first translation, and now it kind of makes sense a little bit, I think. The impressions which normally arise are made to disappear at the appearance of suppressive efforts, which in turn create new mental modifications. The moment of conjunction of the mind and new modifications is Nirodha Pranina. So after I read all, I don't know about you, Pam, but after I went through that other piece, it kind of made more sense then that there's two sets of samskaras and they're kind of balancing each other. So you're getting rid of the everyday samskaras that your mind is, you know, scattered and it's all over the place, and you're consciously employing a new set of samskaras, which is to suppress that in some way, or to restrain that. And at the moment of restraint, that's when you're actually meditating, when you're able to restrain those regular, everyday samskaras. But it means that you've got now a new set of samskaras, which I hadn't thought about before. But I suppose it's what I, in some way, have experienced in this this attempt for concentration, is that when you've got those little, you feel, you know, you're kind of in a flow of concentration, and then you get a thought pops in, but then you're able to let it go, or just acknowledge it and come back to the concentration. So I suppose that's the kind of tussle that he talked about between the two sets of samskaras, that as you're working on that ability to sit and concentrate, that you've got that little tussle going on between your, you know, the normal flow of your mind and what you're trying for with the suppression and the concentration. So it's just an explanation of what that is. Will I go on to the next one?
I appreciate how much work you did researching all these sutras and tying them together, because it really does make sense. And I started reading a book on yoga trauma yesterday that I've been meaning to read. And I was thinking something along the lines of this, not in these terms or words, but I was trying to think about it for myself, to tie examples for myself into learning this trauma yoga and how trauma lives in our body.
Uh-huh.
And like, I was trying to think of it in like a traumatic way, but also tying it to how positive experiences, because I can't always think about a samskara as something negative. So I was thinking about like, and even when we take these trauma workshops, like thinking about, like they call them reminders, something that triggers you. It could be a smell, it could be a word in a song, it could be a color on the shirt, whatever.
Right.
Anything could be a reminder. And I think to me, that's something like you could get stung by a bumblebee when you're a little kid. Or like, this is why people that get bit by dogs are now scared of dogs forever. And it's fair, because that's how our body keeps us safe.
Right.
But what they're saying is, and I don't know if this is what I'm getting from this sutra, and but it's like what they're saying is, then next time we see a bumblebee or a dog, we're living in the past. We're having the experience, but in the past, because we're safe now from the dog and the bumblebee. But we're like having some scars because we're having that past one.
Right.
And then we're having the new one. And I guess it could be like, if you're trying to get your favorite food from a restaurant and it comes and like, you just comes and it's not as good as last time. Because it's like your expectations.
Yes.
It's like it doesn't come and you're disappointed. So I guess if you are aware that everything's always fluctuating through the gunas, and you just completely live in the present and do not have any expectations and don't set yourself up based on your samskaras, then that's basically living in the present.
Right. And I think it's just sometimes it helps to just kind of understand, or for me anyway, because I like to be able to understand everything. That just knowing what's going on in your mind, understanding the process, that you have those samskaras that are never going to be gone. They're just latent.
Yeah.
And you can deal with them. You can have dealt with them through whatever means that you've chosen to do that, and feel like they're gone, but they're not. They're still there, and something can trigger it. But if you're aware that you can now have a new samskara, you can now have something new to replace it, then that's got to be helpful. Just knowing how the mind works, knowing that, yes, that was a trigger because of what's already happened, but I can let that go because I've already acknowledged this and worked through it.
Yeah, exactly.
Because actually, your example of the bumblebee, I did have, when I was very young, I caught a bumblebee in my hand, not intentionally, but it had come in through the window, and I was asleep, and in my dream I thought it was something else, and so I woke up and I had caught this bumblebee in my hand, and it hadn't stung me because it was at the end of its life, which is why I think it was able to be caught. But I was kind of afraid of bumblebees from then on. But I'm not anymore, and I have to consciously, when I see things like that, I've replaced it with oh my God, we're so lucky to have bumblebees, and we have to protect them, and we need to have them in the world, and they're so fabulous, they're so amazing, that I've replaced that fear that I used to have, because I remember the feeling of it in my hand, with this. I've consciously replaced that memory with a positive one.
Yeah, and I think it's fair that you did feel that way when the bumblebee was in your hand. Like, we have to acknowledge that at that moment,
right.
it's fair that you felt that way. But
Right.
then the next day, and it's so much easier. Like, it's trying to understand it, and like you can't just say this to somebody else, be like, just get over your fears. And like, what I'm trying to do is for myself, like really sit, like I was saying this the other day, we were watching a show, and they're like best friends, and they force each other to do things, and they forced him to like jump out of an airplane and go skydiving, and he has like a fear of flying, fear of heights, and he has tears down his face, and he has to do it. And I said to, like, Eric and I want to go skydiving. It's been something we wanted to do for years. And I said to him, I bet you I would be fine up until that moment, and then I'd be scared out of my mind. But like, rightfully so. Like, my body would be like, don't do this. And then I get to yeah. And I do this when I go skiing too. Like, I love to go skiing until I'm at the top of the mountain, and then the fear takes over.
Right.
And this is what I was thinking about yesterday. Like, if I get to the top of the mountain and I let fear take over, and I tense up and I pizza slice down the whole mountain, I hurt myself, I'm miserable, I'm cold. But then when I get to the top of the mountain and I acknowledge the fear and I say, I am safe, it's okay if I fall, I'm in control, I'm gonna go slow, right, I have the greatest time.
Yeah.
And like, that's, to me, taking control of the samskara and the mind. But then there's like examples where like I am terrified of fish, and I know there was something in my past that happened in this lifetime at least. And so I tried to go scuba diving in Aruba, and I put the snorkel on, I went in the water, and I froze. Like, there are some fears that you just can't mentally get over. Like, there's more work to be done there. And I don't know I don't know if it's important enough for me to do the work to overcome my fear of fish. So that could be somebody else's choice too. Like, do I really want to go submerge myself in with fish so I can go scuba diving? No, there's probably other things. So like, then there's those like where I'll just like let that one simmer instead of keep bringing and I'll forget. Like, I don't like live my day-to-day life like, oh, I'm scared of fish today. It doesn't happen to me until I choose to go scuba diving, which I won't do again. Right. So like, those were the different, like, the different examples. This was just yesterday. I was thinking about all of this, but then tying it into like, well, then it has to be to positive things too. Like, if you're going on vacation, like, you can't get all excited. Like, you just have to live in the moment and appreciate, because then people will get upset, like, oh, the weather was awful, like over things we can't even control. And now you've created one samskara because you created the false reality of what you wanted, and then the other one comes in and it becomes even worse because it wasn't what was here.
Right.
So it is like, I mean, we know all of this as yoga teachers, but like putting it into practice and like really being like, wow, this is really what it means. Even with this COVID situation, like, I keep thinking, like, if you're like, oh my God, it's so bad, my child had to miss this, and then that's the experience you're going to take with you out of this. But if you're like, it's not that bad, we're home safe. Mm-hmm. I know people, like, I mean, whatever you want to create for yourself, but through this samskara, and I see people that were like posting on Facebook, and I'm like, that memory is going to stay with you because you're going to see it next year when it pops up, and the year after. Like, I try to be mindful about what I'm posting on my feed because it's going to stay with me. Mm-hmm. Like, and you try to create your samskaras. So
I feel like I used to, and I thought this was just something that comes down with age, but I used to get so upset when I had put a lot of effort into planning something and then something would happen and it wouldn't go as planned. And it seemed like it was so important for me for it to go the way I planned. And I would get really bothered by silly things. I mean, I don't mean like putting effort into planning a party or something, not even big things. I think when the boys were little, I had a routine, and if I ever left and left Shay with, I would leave him with lists of things that he had to do, which was ridiculous. He should just have done whatever he wanted to do. And only if I asked him, if he asked me for specific advice, I could have left him, feeding things and stuff like that, because he didn't do it. But then I would get myself into a knot if things didn't go the way it was supposed to go. And when I look back at it, I go, I can't believe I used to be like that. And I don't know really when it changed. I think it was just over time experience. I'm just like, you can't plan things that way. You have to just go with the flow. I don't know whether maybe it was teaching that's changed my mind, because you plan and plan and plan, and then it never goes the way you plan it, ever. So, you spend a lot of time planning because you have to, but then things never actually turn out, the lessons never actually go the way you planned. You have to be able to turn on a dime and deal with it. And sometimes even something better happens than you planned. So being able to
exactly
if you can go with the flow, sometimes something even better happens. So
because you're moving, I love that. Like sometimes something even better happens because like in that moment you're doing exactly what needs to be done based on the environment. Yeah.
And so letting go of all that planning. I'm not saying that you shouldn't plan things, because I think planning and being organized is still important. I think it's an important thing in life. But to be able to say, but it might not work this way, and that's okay too.
It happens all the time as a yoga teacher for me. Like I'll plan my class and I'll walk in and be like, today I'm not going to do this. And then I'm like, oh, I guess we're going to do it today. Or like, I'm going to teach this today. And then I see the class and I'm like, nope, no, we're not. But I have backup plans. Like I have different roads I can go down.
Exactly. Based on what you see when you get there. I find that a lot when I was teaching the beginners class.
Yeah.
You could have your sequence ready, and then you get there, and the people who are in front of you, because there was a couple of regulars, and there was different people would come all the time. So you would have to just go with whoever was there.
And this one can't be on her knees, and this one can't be on her wrist.
Right.
Or his, and it's like, okay, just lay on your mat and be there and breathe for 5 minutes.
Exactly. Exactly. So,
Yeah, and I think if you are where you're supposed to be, like, I never get nervous that I'm going to mess up as a yoga teacher, because like Micheline has said this before, like your sequences are going to come from your root, like your gut, like they're planted there. And like, I can just trust that the universe is going to guide me through. I mean, I plan, but I'm never like, what should we do next? Like I talk to the students before class to see what's going on, the weather for the, like whatever's the mood, you take into different considerations. And then usually during class, I'm like, where did that come from? That was all, like for me at least, who knows how the students feel, but like, like
I think
the universe will give you the less. And I have this on my board: over planning will kill magic. And I really try to do that more, because I can get really bad, and yoga teacher training has definitely helped me not be so like strict. Like I like my house in order, but I do it. I don't leave lists for Eric. I have to do it myself because I want it done. Like he did towels the other day, and he jokingly, because I said, don't fold them. I'll have to fold them a certain way. Just leave them there. And I don't mind doing it. So like, just leave it. And then he folded the 5 towels in different shapes. So one was a triangle, one was a line. He was just being silly. Funny. And I was like, it's fine. And like, there's certain things where it's not a planning thing. It's like, let me just do it thing.
Right.
But I don't know if that's necessarily
I used to have that too with folding and with doing things, and now I just don't. Now, see, I had to let go too. I let my boys do their own. I make my boys do their own laundry. But no, actually, I let them because they needed to learn how to do it.
Yeah.
And so when they eventually do go off on their own, they know how to do their own laundry. So does it frustrate me when I see them just gather the things out of the dryer in a big heap and just dump them somewhere? Of course it does. But well, that's the way you want your clothes to be. And that's your problem, not mine.
Yeah, same. Like I had to do it because Eric and I don't do each other's laundry. And I think that's why we last so long. Like, do your own laundry. But I'm like, I don't tell him, like, just because I want things a certain way doesn't mean he has to do them. Like, he's an adult too. So like he has his own samskaras to deal with. So let him do it his way. And that was definitely something that I was like proud of myself when we started living together, that I wasn't so like, and I just do it myself.
Right.
And I think that came from, I remember even living in college, like I had 9 roommates because we had 10 women living in a suite together with one kitchen, and nobody ever took out the garbage. You know, it was one of those things when I'm like, I'm not going to complain about it. I'm just going to do it. And
Right.
that's where my like action comes in. And then I create positive samskaras because it's like, I'm just doing it instead of, oh, he didn't fold the towels the right way, and then creating that samskara. Or no one ever takes out the garbage and creating that samskara. Like, I'm just doing it, getting it done, move on to the next thing. Yeah. I guess that's where the samskara comes in from.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're not like you said, like you're not making a list for somebody to do things your way.
Right.
And then them not getting done your way.
Your way. Yeah.
Yeah. Like I could tell Eric to load the dishwasher and he would, but it wouldn't be the way I load it.
Yes. That's another thing, but that's another one I've let go of because it doesn't matter to me anymore. And so we've got, I do most of the cooking. She occasionally cooks, but I do most of the cooking in the house, but the boys do all the cleanup. So, you know, whatever way it gets loaded up, I don't really care. As long as things get cleaned.
Yeah, and like I know I get all my like strict things because my mom's parents were very strict with her, and my mom wasn't necessarily strict with us, but just the way she did things had like a very military thing to it because that's how she was raised with her father. Like the bed, the towels, the dishwasher. So it was passed on to me, but not in a negative way. So I think that's why I take it that way. It's just like, this is just how I do things. It wasn't like a yelled at thing. So like, I'm not like rebelling against it because it's like, I get it. Like, this is just a nice way to do things. But if like my mom carried it differently, because for her, it was a very negative, yell, strict, like, don't go outside of the lines type of thing.
Right.
So like her daily chores of doing it this way was like traumatic for her.
Right.
That was me.
Right. And then it sometimes just takes a long time, or it takes conscious work to notice that you've carried over something that didn't even belong to you.
Oh
yeah.
Jackie, what you were talking about, having getting upset when things don't go, oh my God, I used to be a mess.
Right.
It's awful because things never go the way you plan them to go.
Exactly.
Like even at work, when I was a flight attendant, I used to get so frustrated with everyone I worked with because they just did everything like, you know, like carelessness and like not put stuff together and not clean up after that. It used to drive me insane.
Right.
And now I look back and I like wasted energy, man.
Right. Totally.
But
how many times do you get mad when you're like, I'm gonna wear this dress and I'm gonna look great in it, and then you put it on and it like And then, but all these other items of clothing out there to choose from, but you're like fixated on this one thing. Like, it's so many things like that. And then we just are miserable. Or even like when Kramer wakes up in the morning, and at first I'd be like, oh, I want to do my meditation. I want to be sitting in my spot. But then I quickly changed that, because I'm like, his walks have a finite ending. Like, this is not going to last forever. So like, the fact that I can still get up and walk him brings me so much joy. So if I have to put my earphones in and walk and miss it being this perfect idea I created for myself.
Right.
And like, so you do like once you start this practice, you do catch yourself more and more, like being like, no, that's not the samskara. That's not how I want to remember this.
Exactly. And it's not even how you want to remember it. It's just, I don't want to have that feeling of annoyance in me. There's not really any need to have a feeling of annoyance.
Yeah.
If you can just go with the flow, and then maybe even take something. So you got some fresh air, and you got, it was just.
Oh my God, it's totally fine. It's like you said, it turns out better. It's a beautiful morning. The birds are chirping. Like, is it really that big of a deal? No.
Right.
But could I have made it into one and ruined my day? Yes. And does that happen? I do that to myself sometimes, but for the most part, it's like, okay, in this moment, this is what needs to be done. It's just like that quote, like, just keep doing the next right thing, one breath at a time.
Yeah.
Whatever that right thing is.
Yeah.
I think this was a good one. Good timing.
I think I'll keep on with these translations for whoever's doing the next couple, because the next couple in our book don't have any commentary on them. And
yeah, that was
for
smart.
me personally, I didn't really understand them without some kind of explanation, or without Amanda here to explain it to us. So
that was smart the way you did it. And I don't have that version, but I have another version, so I can even read that. I actually was thinking,
I was looking up online as well about the third book, and what's the other version that you have?
I have the one Adriana reads out of, the Carrera.
The Carrera, okay.
I think it's
because I might invest in another, because like I said, I did this, the Edwin Bryant one I find very, very dense. It happened to be good for these ones. It happened to be helpful. But sometimes I find it more confusing.
I have this one, Inside the Yoga Sutras. It's by Reverend Jagannath Kaur. I can text it to you, but I'll and I can even send you like what he writes for today, so you know.
Right.
But that's like, that's another samskara, like it didn't even come to my mind to go grab this book, compared to, I just keep grabbing Patanjali's book. But now I'm going to put it here with my stuff, so I remember. I was remembering when Adriana was doing it, and I forgot.
Right. I had read yesterday too that there's a translation by a woman, or a commentary, not translation, but a commentary by a woman who writes the commentary for women more. So kind of, how this is very male.
Oh yeah.
And so I was like, oh, I'll have to look for that one.
If you find it, can you text it to me?
Yeah.
Too, name of it?
Yeah.
Because I would be interested in that.
Ladies, it's 8:10.
Okay. So we should start breath work. So find a seat, or wherever you're going to be most comfortable. There we go again. It doesn't have to be a seat. It can be wherever you need to be.
Oops.
And take a deep breath in and let it go. Take a couple of settling breaths. And then we'll do alternate nostril breathing. So leaving the left hand in the lap, using the right hand, the thumb to close off the right nostril, and the ring finger for the left nostril. Taking a breath in through the left. Hold both. Exhale right. Inhale right. Close both. Exhale left. Inhale left. Close both. Exhale right. Inhale right. Close both. Exhale left. Inhale left. Close both. Exhale right. Inhale right. Close both. Exhale left. Take 5 more rounds at your own pace, perhaps pausing at the top of the inhale, or maybe even at the bottom of the exhale if that's in your practice. Ending with an exhale out of the left nostril. And then we'll proceed into our meditation or our concentration practice. And I'll set the timer for 20 minutes. Bringing the hands to the heart. In your head. Namaste. Coming back to the room. Bringing your hands to your heart. Namaste. Have a nice day.